Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle Me. In my series Freemasonry and Satanism. Freemasonry. What does that have to do with Satanism? I'm learning. It has everything to do with Satanism. Apparently, religions came about because certain individuals were able to communicate with the invisible reality. Psychics, mediums, seers, channelers, prophets, all kinds of names for these people. Whether it was a gift or something they studied and learned how to do, to communicate with the beings behind the veil. So they call it the veil, the invisible reality, the spiritual world. Okay, so what's that have to do with Satanism? Well, apparently, some of these revelations or communications preached, like Jesus taught, that we are to love one another and that there exist commandments from the invisible world, God's world, if you will. But then some people communicated with the invisible reality and they were told quite the opposite. They said, there's no rules. You can do whatever you want. Don't believe those other rules. So you got two opposing religions, if you want to call Satanism a religion. But both of them apparently were derived from some kind of communications from some kind of otherworldly beings. And that pretty much applies to all religions. They call it divine revelations, whatever. The Hindu religion, Shiva and all those deities, gods, whatever. The Buddhist religion with Buddha and their deities. Zoroastrianism. Even the American Indians or the Hopis or the Mayans or the Peruvians or Ecuadorians, or Aboriginals over there in Australia. All the indigenous tribes all over the world had their shamans. Call them witch doctors, if you will. Hawaii, the kahunas, the witch doctors. I've gone over this stuff. Mexico, the witch doctors used peyote to communicate with the invisible reality. Peru, they take ayahuasca. Hawaii, they got the witch doctors. Even apparently capable of imprisoning deceased spirits and using them for their dirty deeds, killing people. Apparently, when the kahuna in Hawaii sets out to have somebody killed, he sends these spirits to possess that person, and they have something called a wasting away disease. And even Jesus in the Bible, when he would cast out unclean spirits or demons from people, they would go from a raving lunatic, all diseased, into a healthy being. So what are we dealing with? So I did make a video on this book, The Messianic Idea in Judaism, and other essays on Jewish spirituality. Spirituality, get it? Spirits. Gershom Sholom, I'm probably saying that wrong. Series 259. So in my pursuit to try to figure out WTH, what the heck is going on, and what's with all this craziness going on in the world today, in the pursuit of a global world order, apparently orchestrated, controlled, and in movement forward like a freight train coming at us. global world order, all kinds of preparations. Apparently all these beings doing this are members of these secret societies in communication with some kind of beings from behind some kind of veil. Beings maybe that are from hell or Hades. Obviously not the ones from heaven, because they're anti-Christian. I realize that's a lot to swallow. But this created reality, this flesh and blood that makes up me and you and the books behind me and the keyboard behind me and all that matter that we have, is third dimensional matter. Then I was watching David Wilcock and Corey Goode talking about Earth ascending to fourth dimension, where everything is much more pliable. You can manifest things, communicate with people telepathically, transmute things, transport yourself across the planet, across space, fourth dimension. It's an interesting conversation. So I listened to David Wilcock, I listened to Corey Goode, and I listened to this Kabbalah material, and I listened to the Christian material, and I listened to the UFO alien material, and the Mandela effect, where apparently things in our reality are changing. And I'm trying to find out, what's the truth here? What are we dealing with? So I made part 1 on this book from Gershom Sholem, the Messianic idea in Judaism. So again, I'll repeat from this video. 2,000 years ago, the Jewish people prophesied, communicated with beings from behind the veil. They told them that the Savior was coming. So from in this other invisible dimension, heaven or Hades, wherever you want to say, sounds like heaven because it was prophesied that a Savior was going to come to planet Earth and teach them how to live and solve their problems. That's what the shamans did in Mexico, in Peru, and Ecuador, and Argentina, Hawaii. When they went behind the veil into another dimension, wherever it is, the spirit world, they went there to solve problems, cure people. Throughout thousands and thousands of years, the beings behind the veil existed, and they exist today. But, as we all know about reality, some people are just selfish, perverted, greedy. They are envious, deceitful, and if they learn these shamanic techniques, rituals, to be able to go beyond the veil or control spirits or whatever, you can have people that are evil that have these powers. And it seems that's the situation we're dealing with today. And for the past few thousand years, these people who seem to have control of the planet, the elites from the secret societies, have gone out of their way to murder people who knew this stuff that wasn't on their side, and burn like the Library of Alexandria. Even in Mexico City, when the conquistadors invaded Mexico, and Mexico City, with the ancients, Mexico City, there's a big swamp around a lake, huge city with the natives in Mexico. But the conquistadors beelined for the Shama's hut to get his secrets and proceeded to kill him, and then started taking all the valuables and the gold and killing the people. So they've slaughtered a lot of people all over the planet to prevent the common citizens, you or me, from knowing this information. So I did part 1 on this book. The same author wrote this book, so I'm going to do part 2 to the same series number, 259. So now that I've said all that, maybe it'll make some sense when I read what I'm about to read. You get the synopsis of what the reality is all about. Apparently all these religions are derivatives of information obtained by people who could communicate with the other world. Call them psychics, call them channelers, call them mediums, call them prophets, call them witches, call them magicians, call them seers, sorcerers, Kabbalists, shamans, all these witch doctors for all these native tribes all over the world. Today, what do people know? What do people believe? And when you think about all that I've just said, how far is it to reach to say, well, wait a minute. It isn't so strange to believe that Jesus was telling the truth. It isn't so strange to think that somebody would come from the other side, whether born as a human being and then possessed by that spirit, the Holy Ghost or whatever, and teach that we are to love one another. And it isn't strange that there's the fallen angels mentioned in the Bible, demons and beings, that there could possibly be beings in the spirit reality that are selfish or envious or jealous or evil. Why did 1/3 of the angels get cast out of heaven according to the Bible? So again, my point is, not everybody is benevolent and service to others and caring about other people as they care for themselves. There are people that are malevolent and selfish and freaks that want to control the world, and perversions and perverted, want to rape children and have other adults as slaves and serve their own nasty deeds and needs. Get kind of carried away talking here. But let me read from the book, page 26. So I've been reading this, as you can see here. Gershom Shalom on the Kabbalah and its symbolism. So right from the Jewish experts' book, maybe we should listen to this material and open our minds and understand and see what the battle going on the planet right now is all about. And all this is in alignment with Christian biblical prophecy, as well as Islamic and their holy book, the Quran, biblical prophecy. And apparently these people that are into mysticism, witchcraft, whatever you want to call it, communicating with other beings, that have us in the situation we are today, bringing us World War I, World War II, 9/11, and all kinds of other rituals where they're killing children and other people. The beings that are telling them what to do, obviously, are quite, in my opinion, evil. But they would have you believe, as a lot of New Agers preach, there's no such thing as evil. You can do what you want. But let me read from the book. You decide. The Jewish authorities, for example, tried to avoid conflicts by restricting the right to engage in mystical practice and speculation to fully trained Talmudic scholars. So the Jewish authorities didn't want anybody out there engaging in mystical practices and speculation. They wanted it to only be in the hands of trained Talmudic scholars. All Kabbalistic manuals quote Maimonides' warning. All Kabbalist manuals, so they have manuals to study Kabbalah. Kabbalah means tradition, and in the Jewish people's religion, the tradition was to practice this mysticism, communicating with beings from behind the veil. And apparently that's what witchcraft is about too. Yes? So anyways, and it says here, no one is worthy to enter paradise, the realm of mysticism, who has not first taken his fill of bread and meat, i.e., the common fare of sober rabbinic learning. So they don't want anybody practicing this Kabbalah, mysticism, unless they have taken some sober rabbinic learning, going to the Orthodox or the existing religious schools. They didn't want anybody else partaking in this mystic rituals to communicate with beings from behind the veil. Such warnings, it must be admitted, were none too effective. The history of the great religions abound in lay mysticism and in movements growing out of it. Lay mysticism. In the history of Christianity, lay mysticism is exemplified by such movements as the Gnostics, the Brethren of the Free Spirit, and the Spanish Alumbrados, and the Protestant sects of the last 4 centuries. The Church, it is true, branded all such movements as heresies. Well, I guess they would. If you didn't go along with the Christian religion back then and you were preaching some other religion about some other deity, you would be accused of heresy, punishable most likely by burning at the stake or beheading, like the Inquisition. It was a horrific affair. People accusing everybody else of witchcraft, and they were in long lines beheading people. But in Judaism, this was not always the case. Although many of the great Kabbalists fully met the requirements of Maimonides' conservative warning, there were always Kabbalists who were not so well versed in rabbinic knowledge, or who, in any case, had no complete Talmudic schooling. A case in point is the most celebrated of all Jewish mystics of recent centuries, Israel Baal Shem. I thought that was an interesting name. His first name is Israel, like the state of Israel. His last name is Baal Shem, B-A-A-L, and apparently B-A-L, Baal, is some kind of demon entity. And this was the founder of Polish Hasidism. So apparently a lot of those Yiddish Jewish people who were shipped to the United States after World War I were Hasidism, and apparently they were into a different kind of religion than the normal Jewish people's religion. Even in the Jewish groups of people, some of them remained loyal to the historic Orthodox religion, some kind of a being, deity, preaching to the people, like God giving Moses the 10 Commandments. And then some people prefer to be following later prophets who taught something different, which would be called Reformed Jewry. And today we would probably call that the New Age and all this new theosophical, theophist religious teachings. New Age. His knowledge in the traditional sense of the word was very meager. He had no teacher of flesh and blood to guide him on his way. The only spiritual guide he ever alluded to was the prophet Ahijah of Shahol, with whom he was in constant spiritual and visionary contact. So here you go, Israel Baal Shem, founder of Polish Hasidism, was communicating with some kind of invisible being, spiritual guide. He alluded to was the prophet Ahijah Shalom, with whom he was in constant spiritual and visionary contact. You getting the picture here? In short, he was a pure lay mystic, and lay mysticism was a vital factor in the development of the movement he founded. Yet this movement, though at the price of a compromise, won the recognition of the traditional authorities. So here you have the traditional authorities, and you got this renegade mystic communicating with other types of beings and bringing this information to the authorities, the leaders of the religious groups of the Jewish people. And it was a different kind of a teaching, and so they made a compromise. Other movements in which lay mysticism played an important part, the Sabbateans, for example, were unable to gain such recognition and were forced to open conflict with the rabbinic authorities. So what kind of spiritual information would be forthcoming with Sabbatianism, Levi Sabbatai? And he was like a raving maniac, but apparently would go into trances and would start communicating from the other world. So apparently it was the opposite information than you would get from the prophets that were delivering the Christian message or Jesus' teaching to the world. And it says open conflict with the rabbinic authorities on this book, page 26. Especially in monotheistic religions, one God, and the religious authorities had still another method of avoiding conflict with the mystics of the community. This was to charge them with social responsibility. This put pressure on the mystics to mingle with the simple folk, to participate in the activities instead of remaining amongst themselves in communities of the enlightened. In Christianity, where since the beginning of monotheism, monotheism, one God, mystics have always been able to band together, and this trend has not always been as clear as Judaism, in Judaism. So apparently, even in the Christian camp, as well in the Jewish camp, you had these renegade mystics, people communicating with beings on the other side. Since Talmudic times, we find a decided disinclination to let mystics organize communities of their own. So since Talmudic times, hundreds of years ago, we find a decided disinclination to let mystics organize on their own, have communities of their own. Time and time again, the rabbis insisted that mystical experience, the love of God, must be confirmed by activity in the human community. This was not enough for an individual to pour out his soul to God. So apparently you do these rituals and prove your love to God, whatever. You can communicate to this deity God. Proving your love. I wonder if sacrificing people is one of those things, or killing other people. I guess if it would be an evil deity, you'd have to do evil things to prove your love to that God. Just thinking out loud here. I shall not speak in detail of this tendency. Suffice it to say that it has been highly effective in taming mystics and holding them within the limits imposed by traditional authority. So I did look up Kabbalah mystics on Yahoo image site, and I made a short clip, so this would be a good time to take a look at that clip. Hello, Rick Miracle here again with another Yahoo image search. I searched the word Kabbalah mystics. I'm reading the book Kabbalah and its Symbolism by Gershom Shalom, and I thought I'd take a peek because it mentions mystics and it mentions the Kabbalah. So here you have the tree of life, the Sephiroth, apparently the different spheres of reality, to the best of my understanding. And those spheres apparently are spiritual spheres. As you can see, this Sephiroth is connected to this man's mind. Apparently there are 72 different points on this circle, and all kinds of trees, if you want to call them, out surrounding it, above and below. So again, I'm still looking at it. A couple common denominators, as we can see here. One is the serpent, the lion with a human head, the Sephiroth, Jewish mysticism. I want to take the mystery out of this mysticism. This is a tree of life again. And notice in the center is the six-pointed star, which is on the Israeli flag. Sephiroth, tree of life. Different dimensions. Ron Feldman. Jewish mysticism in the Kabbalah. The pyramid. Here we have the rainbow. The crown. Sephiroth. Looks like the sun in the middle. A sun. Jewish mysticism. Jewish mystics. Here we have divination. Here's an all-seeing eye on this parchment. Down below we see the 9 candlestick holder and the 6-pointed star. Symbols for the Jewish people's religion, which has historically been the Kabbalah. And books associated with it, the Torah, Talmud. This hand sign seems to be something they use for some kind of ritual. And the 7-stick candlestick seems to be replacing Christian symbols during Christmas. One of the holy symbols for the Jewish Kabbalah people's religion. The mystic quest in Kabbalah. Here's another interesting picture. You got the 2 columns here, Bose and Joachim, mentioned many times in the Freemasonic text and books when you go after the different degrees when you become a Freemason. 1st degree, 2nd degree, 3rd degree, and up. And the front of the Freemasonic lodges in your town or city has these columns out front. So here we can clearly see the connection between the Sephiroth and the wings above, like Isis's wings, and the columns, Bose and Joachim. It says here, medicine tree, psychedelic Kabbalah for the modern psychonaut. So what's a psychonaut? Probably somebody who takes psychic trips. Like I said before, I basically study this slowly. 6-pointed star like on the Israeli flag. And apparently Israel, controlled by the Illuminati Zionists, and as we can see, involving the Freemasons and Rosicrucians and other secret societies, they all pretty much control the world. Looks like when you go around this particular circle, you see the signs of the astrology. Libra, Scorpio, etc. So you got a human head in the background here. 7-stick candle, menorah. Jesus predicted as a black man here, so it seems. Adjacent with the Jesus Christ taught the true Kabbalah, black Jewish. The heart of Jewish mysticism. Dion Fortune, Mystical Kabbalah. I believe Dion Fortune wrote the book Psychic Self-Defense. Interesting. I made a video on that, series 14. So the best thing that I've been able to tell is this mysticism, mystics are receiving information from some unseen entities. You got Jesus Christ on a cross here. Looks like a tree of life with different parts of his body pointing to different spheres. 7-stick candlestick below. Looks like a Rosy Crucian picture. I got a bird here. The scandal of the Kabbalah. The Jewish mystical path. Mystics of the Kabbalah. So many books. Another interesting picture. A human standing on a bird. Looks like Hebrew characters around the perimeter. Weird and enchanting facts about the number 23. Kabbalah signs, occult symbol, mysticism occult. All-seeing eye, 6-pointed star like on the dollar bill, above the bird, and on the back of the dollar bill, and on the Israeli flag with the all-seeing eye. Is that telling us something? Looks like a three-dimensional 6-pointed star, something called a tetrahedron or a Merkabah. Apparently something that allows you to see into other dimensions. And it says up here, Kabbalah Mystic Merkabah 3D Magen David pendant, and the 6-pointed star is called the Magen David, and the Merkabah, like Barbara Marciniak in the videos I made on her books to communicate with the Palladians, the bringers of the dawn. She uses the Merkabah to go into a trance and communicate with the angels and the pixies and the Palladians and so many other aliens. Some kind of device that opens up interdimensional pathways for the mind to communicate and see these beings. Rosy Crucian picture, it looks like alchemy. Looks like a chariot that would fly into the heavens, I've seen. Multi-headed being here. Elizabeth Clare, prophet. You can click the links on these pictures and get the inside story. So don't try to be in a hurry to understand this. Just take your time and open your mind. Tree of Life, the 10 Sephirot. Messianic Kabbalah, Revolution. I am learning something here. Apparently, when these mystics communicate with different beings, they get divine revelations. They think these beings are some kind of god or gods. But when you get revolutionary information from these beings that's contrary to the normal religious teachings, well, of course, it becomes revolutionary. And you wind up with the divide in the world, which is what we have today. The first edition of the Zohar, 1558 Library of Congress. The 10 Sephirot are the 10 channels of divine energy or life force from the first God. The most fundamental concept of Messianic Kabbalah is based on these 10 divine emanations. The Zohar called this 10 Sephirot as the tree of life. So you can see here where it's portrayed over the human body like the chakra system. So plenty of sources. I would say this is associated with the New Age teachings, which are definitely anti-Christian. So we have a divide in our world now, and probably looming in our future, a bigger divide. And as revolutions usually work out, a war, maybe a worldwide revolutionary war, because whoever they're communicating with is giving them information contrary to the information of historic Orthodox religions. So you give a lot of mysticism, and of course mysticism would be Kabbalah. Many Kabbalists have been accused of sorcery, burned at the stake, etc. Microcosm existence. Adam Kidman, apparently the whole universe is actually a gigantic man and we're all parts of his body. World of emanation. Apparently, according to these teachings, we're all emanations of this divine being, Adam Kidman. World of creation, 7 heavens, archangels, wheel of formation, paradise, angels, world of action. And you get way at the bottom, you get the physical universe and nature. Kabbalah, tree of life. And if you move up on the left side, you get the body, the psyche, the spirit, the divine, humanity, and the all I am. The Keter, the one that I am. The mystical Kabbalah. It's spelled different ways. Dion Fortune. Again, if you see my books, reviews, Freemasonry and Satanism, Series 14, Psychic Self-Defense. Why would she write a book about you need to have psychic self-defense? You need to be armed with the knowledge of who's out there if you enter this mystical world. The secrets of practical Kabbalah, improving your life. Well, what does the word mystic mean? Would a witch be called mystic? The transformation, psychology, and practices of Jewish mysticism. So we have this as the foundation of their religion. And apparently these people into the New Age and pushing for a global world order want this religion to be the religion of the world. Mysticism. Robert Flood and the Kabbalah in Christian mysticism. So that enlightens us a little bit. It's taken me a while, but I can see where the Rosicrucians, Freemasons, high level, the low level Freemasons probably don't know this. And high level Jewish people into the Kabbalah, Zionists, Illuminati banksters, they know what's going on. But lower level Jewish people, they probably don't know what's going on either. Christians, maybe people in high places at the Vatican, etc., maybe they know what's going on. But your average Christian person out there probably doesn't know what's going on. The same thing with other religions. Apparently there are some elite people who are into this mysticism, communicating with beings, and I'm starting to put a little bit of it together, and it goes back to some beings involving ancient civilizations like Atlantis, Lemuria, Hyperborea, Mu, whatever, before the Great Flood. And also apparently they have, I underground or hidden locations all over the planet right now, like Shambhala and other places. So I'm going to continue to try to see where these beings who are controlling all the secret societies, communicating telepathically or holographically, and having the people control we citizens all over the planet like we're cattle. So it seems. Back to the book. In diametrical and irreconcilable opposition to all such attempts to relieve the tension between mysticism and the religious authority stands the extreme case of mystical nihilism. Mystical nihilism. So I suppose we ought to take a peek at what nihilism means if there are people communicating with beings from behind the veil in the invisible reality, and they're called mystical nihilism, and apparently they are diametrically and irreconcilable oppositions to relieve the tensions between mysticism, the regular religions, and the religious authority stands the extreme case of mystical nihilism, in which all authority is rejected in the name of mystical experience or illumination, i.e. the Illuminati. So people apparently did not want to respect the control of the authorities, these people into mysticism, witchcraft if you will, and they're having problems with the authorities, and maybe we could call these people the rogue, renegade people practicing mysticism like the ancient shamans, i.e. you call it witchcraft. But I'm going to look up mystical nihilism and show you that clip. Well, welcome again. Rick Miracle looking up an interesting word, or two words. Mystical nihilism. So let's take a peek and see if we can figure out what mystical, metaphysical nihilism is. This theory is difficult to grasp because it claims that objects do not actually exist. It argues that there may be no concrete objects, instead creating a world centered around abstract items. At its most basic form, this form of nihilism states that there is no method to determine an object's existence because there are no objective standards that define an object. Oh well, I think things exist. Types of nihilism: existential nihilism, metaphysical nihilism, epistemological nihilism, I know I say these names wrong, political nihilism, moral nihilism. So there's no morals. I don't know, it just seems like nihilism just isn't enough anymore. The Nihilist Deli. No salt ham, veggie burgers, decaf coffee, no fat cheese, non-dairy cream. Ah, crud, I think I'm a nihilist again. Metaphysical nihilisms. Little baby doesn't have ultimate meaning, and that makes me very, very sad. So life has no meaning. Nihilism. Nihilism. Wikipedia. From the Latin word means nothing. It is a philosophical doctrine that suggests the lack of belief in one or more reputedly meaningful aspects of life. The Greek philosopher Sophius Georgius, 485 BC to 380 BC, is perhaps the first to consider the nihilist belief. Most commonly, nihilism is presented in the form of existential nihilism, which argues that life is without objective meaning, purpose, or intrinsic value. So let me get this straight. There are people who can communicate with beings from behind the veil, these mystics, and they don't believe life has any meaning, and they know how to use magic, if you want to call it that, and communicate with beings and demons or whatever from behind the veil. Moral nihilism, view that morality does not exist. So here you go, you got some people communicating with beings from behind the veil, and they do not believe in morality. Hence, we also have Moses talking to God from the other side of the veil, bringing us the Ten Commandments, which is morality, but you have other people communicating with beings that morality does not exist. And this is the world we are in today, with the worldwide revolution pending, the battle before the transgender, homosexual marriage, and anti-Christian community against the rest of us. 50-50 probably, like all revolutions, even like the football scores these days. At the end of the game, they're only a couple points apart. Political battles between senators and presidents, they're usually very close, 50-50. This is the way these controllers of our world do it. They keep both sides balanced so they can tip the scales on either side and cause all kinds of chaos and anarchy. So it's the morality and the immorality, the moral people against the immoral people, the existential nihilism, the belief that life has no intrinsic meaning or value. I think you get the idea. You want these people communicating with some beings that there's some kind of supreme deities like Aleister Crowley, bringing us the book of the law, and the law is do as thou wilt. There are no commandments. Versus, of course, God's 10 commandments. There are commandments. So here's the battle. The people who believe there are moral rules for living, and people who believe there are no moral rules for living. Oh boy. The overcoming of nihilism as the recovering. So they want people to believe that Christianity is evil. Interesting Yahoo image pictures. Go look there and click the links. And no way through nihilism. Nihilism is wrong. Keep belief in metaphysical religious faith. Or go the other way. Nihilism is correct. No metaphysical reality. Need to reassess the way that we view the world. You get it? One is Christianity, and the other one is niched, however you say it, nihilism. Nietzsche. So I'm not so lost. Here's one choice. Jesus taught we are to love one another. And apparently people back then, 2,000 years ago, rejected that teaching and crucified, killed Jesus. And apparently those people still exist in our reality. And this is part of the people planning the global world order. Keep calm and embrace nihilism. Don't believe in anything. Could there have been nothing against metaphysical nihilism? Nihilism. Oh my, doesn't matter. Blow up the whole world. Nothing matters. That's what they would have you believe. That's why they can kill so many people. Bring us so many wars. Here, Cornel West says, nihilism is a disease of the soul. It can never be completely cured, and there is always the possibility of relapse. There is always a chance for conversion, a chance for people to believe that there is hope for the future and a meaning to struggle. Nihilism is not overcome by arguments or analysis. It is tamed by love and care. Any disease of the soul must be conquered by a turning of one's soul. This turning is done through one's own affirmation of one's own worth. an affirmation fueled by the concern of others. A love ethic must be at the center of a politics of conversion. Remember, Jesus came to this planet as prophesied, and he taught we are to love one another. The people back then, the Jewish Sanhedrin, rejected that and had him crucified. And today they want to eliminate Christianity from the planet altogether and bring us a nihilistic global world order where people are microchipped. And everybody is either the elite or the slave class. A love ethic has nothing to do with sentimental feelings or tribal connections. Rather, it is a last attempt at generating a sense of urgency, agency, among the downtrodden people. Cornel West. So you can go look up the nihilistic mysticism, mystics, and see this information for yourself. This guy says, I'm a skeptic. Religion assumes without science. Religion is a ridiculous assuredness about the unmeasurable. I know for sure a fact that anything unmeasurable cannot exist. And a lot of people parrot this stuff. They say it. They believe what they've been taught. Nihilism. I believe in it. So nihilism, I believe in it, means you believe in nothing. You believe in that. Sure, I'm into nihilism, but only as a means to an end. No lives matter. That's a funny twist on it. The universe doesn't give a thing about you, as it says on the bottom here. No lives matter. Nihilism. This category of nihilist thinking posts that life has no purpose, value, or objective meaning. Well, I believe you got the point of what a mystical nihilist, somebody into mysticism, witch doctor, magician, whatever you want to call it, witchcraft, they don't believe in morality or God's laws or caring about people. They're into nihilism. There you go. Wow. What do you think about that? People in the secret societies into the dark side and nihilism controlling our world. No wonder they can do world wars and 911 and murder so many people. Nothing matters. So you may as well seize the opportunity. No conscience, apparently. All right, back to the book. At first glance, the nihilist mystic seems to be the most free, the most faithful to his central insight, to have attained the highest goal of mystical experience, namely the dissolution of all form. He extends his mystical insight to his relation with the real world, that is to say, he rejects all values and the authority which guarantees the validity of values. Yet, from the standpoint of history, he is the most constrained and unfree of mystics, for historical reality, as embroidered in the human community, prevents him, far more than it does any other mystic, from openly proclaiming his message. So maybe historically people into witchcraft or sorcery were restrained, even burned at the stake. But apparently that's changing in the world we're in today. This explains, no doubt, why the document of nihilistic mysticisms are extremely rare. Because of their subversive character, the authorities suppressed and destroyed them. There you go. Burned at the stake, killed. Witchcraft. The authorities suppressed and destroyed them. See, if you didn't interpret what this said, you wouldn't know what to think. It took me a long time. Where they have come down to us It is because their authors resorted to an ambiguity of expression that makes our interpretation of the text questionable. This explains, for example, why the nihilistic character of certain mystical doctrines, such as those of the Ismailis and the Druzes in particular, but also of such groups as the Berktashi order of the dervishes, so people who are into the occult, who are into the secrets, who know things and do things they don't want you and I to know. It is still a matter of discussion. On the other hand, the intentional ambiguity of such writings has caused them time and time again to be suspected of mystical nihilism. So can we just say mystical nihilism is sorcery and witchcraft? Evil. Caring about nothing. For want of the original sources of 2nd century Gnostic, turning the page, for want of original sources of 2nd century Gnostic nihilism, which have not come down to us, it seems to me that we possess no more impressive record of the unmistakable nihilistic mysticism than of the Polish book of the Words of the Lord, in which the disciples of Jacob Frank, 1726 to 91, set down their master's teachings after his own spoken words. So I guess these would be followers they used to call the Frankist. So you get these people who follow, even people like Aleister Crowley. I had an argument with a friend of mine in Key West on the phone, and he said, Aleister Crowley, I love him. And he was teaching do as thou wilt, and he was known as the evilest man alive. And again, do they have the planet 50-50, plus or minus, divided right now? I have elsewhere analyzed the circumstances which made possible this eruption of mystical nihilism, an eruption of mystical nihilism within so firmly organized and authoritarian a community as Rabbinic Judaism. I better read that again. The eruption of mystical nihilism within so firmly organized and authoritarian a community as Rabbinic Judaism. So is Rabbinic Judaism into mystical nihilism? Is this why, if you read the Talmud, they hate everybody so much? Mysticism and Messianism, looking for some kind of Messiah, and mysticism played equal parts in crystallizing these ideas, which sprang from the radical wing of the Sabbatean movement. Wow. So, Messianism and mysticism played equal parts. Now remember, they want to rebuild King Solomon's temple. Part of prophecy is this Messiah has to come after the temple is built. And it says here, the eruption of mystical nihilism within so firmly organized and authoritarian a community as Rabbinic Judaism. So we can put those two things together and say that the current Zionist, Kabbalistic, Rabbinic Judaism is looking for some nihilistic Messiah and practicing nihilistic mysticism, and it's a derivative of the Sabbatean movement. And Sabbatean Levi declared himself a Messiah in 1666 and preached commandments that were opposite the Ten Commandments. If you can't get to heaven being a good guy, then you have to get to heaven by being an evil person. That means you have to practice evil. You can't just say you're evil. You got to do evil things to people every day. Just like if you're a Christian, a good person, you're supposed to do good things every day. And so I suppose the opposite would be for evil people. Their religion, by definition, is they've taken a different pathway to reach, they say, the same end. They'll wind up in some kind of higher sphere. Reformed. What interests us here is the way in which the mystical experience of man's contact with the primal source of life could find its expression in a symbol implying the negative of all authority. So they're going to communicate with the primal source, some kind of Godhead, implying the negation of all authority. So they want to have a deity that says there's no commandments. As illumination concerning messianic freedom, so here you have illumination, like the Illuminati, concerning the messianic freedom, a Messiah, in redemption, being redeemed, crystallizes around the symbol of life. In his mystical experience, the mystic encounters life. This life, however, is not the harmonious life of all things inbound with God. I think we could agree with that. A world ordered by divine law and submissive to his authority. I think we can all agree with that. But something very different. So what they're into is something very different. I think we can agree with that. They're anti-Christian. Utterly free, fettered by no law or authority, this life never ceases to produce forms and to destroy what it has produced. It is the anarchic promiscuity of all living things. Oh boy. Into this bubbling cauldron, this continuum of destruction, the mystic plunges. To him, it is the ultimate human experience. For frank anarchic destruction represented all the Luciferian radiance, all the positive tones and overtones of the word life, the nihilistic. The Luciferian radiance, Lucifer, explains a lot. I'm going to hold this up so you can see I'm not making it up. This life, however, is not the harmonious life of all things inbound with God, a world ordered by divine law and submissive to his authority, but something very different, utterly free, fettered by no law or authority. This life never ceases to produce forms and to destroy what it has produced. It is the anarchic promiscuity of all living things into this bubbling cauldron, this continuum of destruction, the mystic plunges. To him it is the ultimate human experience, the frank anarchic destruction represented by all Luciferian radiance, the positive tones and overtones of the word life, the nihilistic. Mystic descends. You can't believe this. The nihilistic mystic descends into the abyss. That would be down in hell and Hades, in which the freedom of living things is born. He passes through all the embodiments and forms that come his way, committing himself to none, and not content with rejecting and abrogating all values and laws. He tramples them underfoot and desecrates them in order to attain the elixir of life. Oh boy. I believe I'll go look up the Luciferian radiance and make a little clip. Well, welcome to another Yahoo image search word review. In this case, it's 2 words. Luciferian radiance, as mentioned in On the Kabbalah and its Symbolism, a book I'm going over. So images kind of help us along in what to think. Don't you think? So we'll start out with the first one. I don't pick and choose when I do this. Black Dragon. Explore Luciferian deviant art. I suppose we could say this looks like witchcraft. There you go. Looks like that statue they put in Oklahoma and Detroit, wherever they have the Ten Commandments. They try to put up the statue of this demon, Satan, Lucifer, Baal, whatever you want to call him. And remember, they did put up the archway, like a doorway of Baal in New York and London. And later I learned they were putting up 1,000 of them all over the world, controlled and financed by the United Nations. That should tell you something, who controls our planet. These demon beings. The luminous stone, of course you have a serpent and you have an apple. Adam and Eve, the apple in the Bible. Again, I just put in those words as directly said in the book I'm going over. So it's referencing some Orions and Sirius star system. That's why you hear about Orion aliens and aliens from Sirius B, and it all has something to do with it. Crucifixion of the Phoenix on the Phoenix Journals. I've made book reviews on the Phoenix Journals. I will continue to do so. All this stuff connects. What's ailing America? Vaccines, foreign DNA. So these nihilistic mysticism, the people controlling our world that apparently are into Luciferianism, are the ones that are putting toxins in our food, our water, vaccines, and dumping chemicals in the sky, and plan on a wow, not too many pictures. So why don't I go back up here and just put Luciferianism. And how about symbols? Serpent eating its tail. You see this in the Rosicrucian material. All-seeing eye on the dollar bill. Pyramids. Eye and serpent. Guess it doesn't take a genius to figure this out. Liberation, illumination, apotheosis. So that's what they teach people with all this stuff. These angel being, fallen angels, whatever. The symbols, the swatch sticker, the crown, the serpent. These people control our planet today, and are the ones behind the destruction of Christianity. They're behind the New Age and all this other social conditioning. The Luciferian order, the all-seeing eye on the dollar bill, pyramid on the dollar bill, says Luciferian order. Get it? Got it? They're playing with our minds. People don't know what to believe. There you go, the two columns you see everywhere in front of the Freemasonic lodges, in front of all kinds of other Masonic type, Messianic type buildings. Thelmaism, Golden Dawn, True Will. The demon is telling you, bafflant. It says right here, do what thou wilt. Just like Aleister Crowley taught. Do what thou wilt is on the top of this picture. There's your demon. Androgynous too, by the way. He's a male and a female. He goes both ways. And he has the wings like a fallen angel. And the horns and the torch on his head. Upside down star, Satanism. And right side star you see everywhere. When the human race learns to read the language of symbolism, a great veil will fall from the eyes of men. They shall then know the truth, and more than that, they shall realize that from the beginning truth has been in the world unrecognized, save by a small but gradually increasing number of appointed by the lords of the dawn as ministers to the needs of the human creatures struggling to regain their consciousness of divinity, Manly Parmo Hall. So just like giving Adam and Eve the apple to bite to open their eyes to life and death and sinful things, so they plan on doing that to humanity now again. Wow, on the dollar bill, this little picture says, look at the string of Roman numerals at the bottom of the Messianic pyramid on the American $1 bill. And rather than reading it as one long number, translate each number as an individual into a sequence as demonstrated above. So I guess it says if you add it all up, you get 666, the mark of the beast. The six-pointed star on the Israeli flag, bringing us the religion that wants to make Christianity illegal, Jesus a false Messiah, contradictory to the Noahide laws, which were secretly passed in 1991 with President George Bush surrounded by a bunch of rabbis, apparently nihilistic mystics or beliefs in that system. There you go. There you go, the owl Moloch. That's an interesting picture here. Wisdom and knowledge shall be the stability of thy times. Freemasons, all-seeing eye. Is there any doubt about the connection? The columns. The Obama logo. The serpent. So let me do one more thing while I'm here. I want to take out symbols and just use the word Luciferianism. Luciferian. Just see what I get. It looks like a lot of the same. Luciferian Gnostics. On the Kabbalah and its symbolism, the people who control the world today, the serpent, the eye, the Luciferian order, these geometric symbols, there's your demon, naked women, serpents. That's enough to be a little concerning, don't you think? Here you go. I've been saying the word witchcraft and sorcery, and here it says Luciferian witchcraft. Michael W. Ford. People are into this. Look at this. Looks like a great group orgy here. This is what they preach. The Luciferian crown. Everybody, even some kind of serpent beings having sex with humans or whatever, or killing them and destroying them. Quite a little gruesome picture, don't you think? This is the deity that the people who control our world apparently are into. Luciferianism, what is it? Luciferians believe that the being they worship is the good version of this being, and do not believe the being they call Lucifer has any of the negative attributes that the Bible describes. So there you have it. Do you want to believe the Bible? Do you want to believe these people into the nihilism, Luciferian ISIS unveiled? What do you want to believe? So that's enough of this. It's a little concerning and disturbing, don't you think? Well, what do you think? You prefer the Kabbalah and nihilism and mysticism and their messianic belief in some kind of Lucifer Messiah coming? In their own books. A little disturbing, to say the least. In this radical interpretation of a symbol, the life-giving element of mystical experience was combined with its potential destructiveness. It goes without saying that from the standpoint of the community and its institutions, such mysticism should have been regarded as demonic possession. That's what it says here. It was so interesting, concerning to me. I highlighted it and lined it with red underneath. So there is a lot of discussion of demonic possession all over the planet. And with that said, I'll just take a quick look at Yahoo images and see what they show us for demonic possession, which appears to be on the increase. Even in China, Ireland, Italy, they're asking for more Christian exorcists. Even in Ohio and other places in the United States, a lot of people are into the Ouija board and divination. And they're becoming possessed, getting themselves involved in these divination or mysticism or Luciferic satanic cults. And that's what happens. When you open your mind and body to these otherworldly beings, people can get possessed. It's quite bizarre. All right, Rick Miracle here, looking up demonic possession on Yahoo image site. What does it look like? Looks like this one here is defying gravity. Oh my. And apparently with the Christian cross, you can get the demonic entities to leave a human. Wow, look at the smoke coming out of her mouth. Oh boy. Oh boy. It's like a big serpent being here. Well, that's enough of this. Goes back in history. Demonic possession is real and victims seeking exorcism. What do you believe? I've said this before. I'll say it again. If anybody thinks I enjoy making these videos like this, think again. But I can see what's going on in our world. And these things have to be said. People have to know what we're dealing with. Why they want to rebuild King Solomon's temple. Why they want to make it illegal to continue to believe in Jesus Christ as a Savior. This is a kind of cosmic battle way above most of our heads. But we can get these books on the used book sites or bookstores and libraries, and we can read them, and we can use our minds, and we can think. But they don't want people to think. And as indicated of one of the enormous tensions that run through the history of Judaism, so if some Jewish people are into this, enormous tension that run through the history of Judaism, I can see why. That this most destructive of all visions should have been formulated in its most unrestrained form by one who rebelled against the Jewish law and broke away from Judaism. So apparently, like I've been saying all along, you can't be anti-Semitic. There are Jewish people who wrote a lot of books and made famous speeches like Benjamin Friedman and Marvin Antelman, rabbi, And authors, Henry Mackay, PhD, Jewish author in Canada, writing the book, Illuminati, the Cult That Hijacked the World. So let's interpret that. The Luciferian, nihilistic mystics and the secret societies have hijacked the world. And a lot of Jewish people have been trying to warn us, as well as a lot of other people. People who have eyes to see and ears to hear. People who use their brain and recognize common sense. Who know that a couple Arabs in some caves didn't do 911. The people who really don't care did it. And who are they to perform those magical feats of disintegrating those buildings? Even Building 7, which free fell, which was not hit by a plane. How does all that concrete and steel just liquefy? It doesn't. Unless people are into some kind of magical power beyond what any of us can comprehend. All right, moving on, section 5 here. It seems to me that a statement which has come down to us from Rabbi Mendel Turum of Ramallah in 1814, one of the great Hasidic saints, throws a striking light on this whole problem of the relationship between authority and mysticism. You think? But these days it seems like the authorities are supporting Satanism and transgenderism and this Rainbow Coalition agenda. And they're fighting against the family value Christian people, and they want to disarm us. And they're having all these computer monitoring systems, facial recognition. They know when you use your credit card or debit card or where you spend money or books you get or what you say on the phone. It's all being recorded. They're going to know who is who and where you are. There's nowhere to hide. So some people, like me, can wake up and say, wait, we better get right with God and know which side of this cosmic battle we're on. Don't let them fool you. It's a harvest for souls. They want souls. God wants to save our souls, and the Luciferian demons, obviously, want the souls when people die. He can only give it away to these demonic entities. Let me try to interpret this statement. The revelation given to Israel on Mount Sinai, that's when Moses went up to the mountain, the bright bush, burning light, whatever you want to call it, spoke to Moses, I am that I am, and here are the 10 commandments. Just trying to give you the sense of the emotion, and I'm sure that was just a little bit, but it must have been pretty powerful to the people there at Mount Sinai and to Moses. As everyone knows, a sharply defined set of doctrines came from this burning bush, glowing light, who said, I am that I am, the God, I guess, that gave Moses the 10 commandments. A summons to the human community, its meaning is perfectly clear. It's in this book here. And it is certainly not without a mystical formula open to infinite interpretation. Now there's 2 trains of thought here. You can read the 10 commandments, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal. It seems to me there's no interpretation of that. Or, if you want to be ambiguous and you want to read something else into it, then that's what they did. These mystics, nihilistic, satanic, demonic people, communicating with some kind of satanic beings, who I guess who could argue with them, give them information from the other side of the veil, that would question those commandments and teachings from God. It says here, but what, the question arises, is the truly divine element of this revelation? The question is already discussed in the Talmud. When the children of Israel received the 10 commandments, what could they actually hear? You're not going to believe this argument this author says. So what did they actually hear? even though they're written in stone, 10 Commandments on 2 tablets. But what did they actually hear? And what could they actually hear? And what did they hear? Some maintain that all the commandments were spoken to the children of Israel directly by the divine voice. Others said that only the first 2 commandments, I am the Lord thy God, and thou shalt have no other gods before me, Exodus 20-2-3, were communicated directly. So some of the rabbis are arguing those 2 commandments were communicated directly to the people. I am the Lord thy God, and thou shalt have no other gods before me. Then the people were overwhelmed. They could no longer endure the divine voice. Thus they had been obliged to receive the remaining commandments through Moses. Moses alone was able to withstand the divine voice. It was he, next page, who repeated in a human voice those statements of supreme authority that are the 10 Commandments. The conception of Moses as interpreter of the divine voice for the people were developed much more radically by Maimonides, whose ideas Rabbi Mandel of Ramanu carried to their ultimate conclusion. So they're going to debate what the commandments from God meant, or really meant. In Rabbi Mandel's view, not even the first 2 commandments were revealed directly to the whole people of Israel. All that Israel heard was the Aleph, A, with which the Hebrew text, the first commandment, begins, the Aleph of the word Anokai, I. This strikes me as a highly remarkable statement, providing much food for thought. For in Hebrew, the consonant Aleph represents nothing more than a position taken by the larynx in your throat when a word begins with a vowel. Thus the Aleph may be said to denote the source of all articulate sound, and indeed the Kabbalists always regarded it as the spiritual root of all other letters, encompassing in its essence the whole alphabet and hence all the other elements of human discourse. To hear the Aleph, I don't know if Aleph is the A. I'll have to look it up. But you get the point. It's these sounds they're hearing, and they're discussing it, trying to make people confused about what the 10 Commandments mean. To hear the Aleph is to hear next to nothing. It is the preparation for all audible language, but in itself conveys no determinate specific meaning. Thus, when his daring statement that the actual revelation to Israel consists only of Aleph, Rabbi Mandel transformed the revelation of Mount Sinai into a mystical revelation, pregnant with infinite meaning, but without specific meaning. Without specific meaning, and also infinite meaning. A bit confusing, don't you think? In order to become a foundation of religious authority, it had to be translated into human language, and that is what Moses did. In this light, every statement on which authority is grounded would become a human interpretation, however valid and exalted, or something that transcends it. Once in history, a mystical experience was imparted to a whole nation and formed a bond between the nation and God. But the truly divine element in this revelation, the immense Aleph, was not itself sufficient to express the divine message, and in itself it was more than the community could bear. Only the prophet was empowered to communicate the meaning of this inarticulate voice to the community. It is the mystical experience which conceives and gives birth to authority. So with that said, I think I'll go take a look at the Alf character, just to see if there's something there. Well, welcome to another Yahoo image site search for the word elf. Revelation. Elf. Elf. The first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, it is silent. Elf. So I guess I was right when I said A. Here you go. Roman, it is an A. They got this Moloch bull here, some kind of religious thing. Bull symbolism, Alf, Tau, Alf, Omega, beginning and end. So I was looking for any kind of occult significance. We see a little bit there. So I'll go back to the beginning and put occult up here. Oh boy, here we go. Occult symbolism of the first letter Alf pamphlet. Now we got some occult anatomy. So much to learn. Who would have thought it had any significance at all? The Occult Review magazine, I guess. Let me go back and look at that again. You got the columns on this magazine, like in front of the Freemasonic lodges and King Solomon's temple. You got the goddess of destruction, Shiva, with the six-pointed star in the circle. The devil, the goddess, and Luciferianism. Wow, I'm looking up occult elf, and I got a picture here and a website. The devil, the goddess, and Luciferianism elves. Wisdom or folly? I guess a tarot card has an elf. Orde Templi Orientis. Like I said, when you do this research, all you can do is take your time. You can't push it, can't figure it out, but you do pick up some things. You got I in here for I. Alf here has an avocado. The first path of the Tree of Life elf. Wow, look at this statue. The Occult Revival. Oh boy. Alf, look at this picture. Symbols of eternal return. Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, Aleister Crowley, the evilest man alive, the Book of the Law, Do As Thou Wilt, the Equinox, the witchcraft holidays, occult holidays, the equinoxes, the solstices. Call this witchcraft? What do you call it? Alf's heretical domain. You can click these links to these pictures and get the details. No wonder people are becoming possessed. Double portion inheritance, the Alf and the Ta. You don't think this is an anti-Christian thing? Serpent thing? It's all right here. The eagle, the bull, the lion. And I'm just looking up the word occult elf. Drugs, occult, related crime. Oh boy. Look at this being with all these heads. Mysticism, mystics, Alf, the fool. The eye, the six-pointed star on the Israeli flag. If you draw a line on the stars above the eagle on the back of the dollar bill, you get a six-pointed star. You got a demon here with wings, a king here, a serpent eating a serpent, the sun and the moon. Alf. Aleister Crowley. Kibler Elves. Wisdom or folly? Seriously, wisdom or folly? Aleister Crowley. Occultism images. You can go to Yahoo image site and get this stuff. Looks like some kind of spiritual beings here. I don't want to study witchcraft personally, but I am trying to understand. What's this one say? The Occult Vault. Abrabaran Moon Occultation, YouTube. Well, that's an interesting picture. Horparkrat, or Hippocrates, the Egyptian lord. Liber Alf. Who would have thought looking up Alf or occult Alf would get you this? Definitely connected. That's a monster-looking being. A burning church. 17 best images about 666. I don't know if you can call that best images. I guess it depends what you're into. A lot of people, Hollywood stars, and other people doing the eyes thing, putting the hand over one eye. Look in magazines, you'll see all the models covering up one eye. Sephiroth, Tree of Life, Kabbalah symbol. Cocaine, Aleister Crowley. Oh my. I keep going, it gets worse and worse. VW. Apparently that's one of those hidden symbols. The pagan, occult, satanic American statue. Here's an A on this thing here for the Freemasonic symbol. Oh boy. Occult Alf. Whoa, what's this? A hand dripping blood. Science fiction, James Blish, Black Easter, or Faust Elf. Oh boy. Science fiction. Reptilian being, upside down cross. Black Easter. The secret rituals of the OTO. I wouldn't recommend anybody getting this book. So Alf must have some kind of witchcraft significance. I suspect all these pictures do. The dispenser of wisdom according to occultism pamphlet. So people see these symbols everywhere in the New Age and teachings. And they probably don't have a clue what all this means. Here it is right here. I guess what it all means. Satan's origins in the god. Baal. B-A-A-L. Alf's heretical domain. I guess that's enough of this. So I've got about 20 minutes left on my 2-hour video. So I went further back in this chapter, and I'll read a little bit from page 17 and use up 20 minutes. Although I do believe anybody watching this video can see the concerning aspect of where we are today with the religious aspect of President Donald Trump and President or leader of Russia, Putin, and other countries moving their embassies from Tel Aviv, Israel, to Jerusalem and rebuilding the temple, which is their prophesied return or an arrival of a Jewish Messiah. And apparently, according to prophecy, it's supposed to be an Antichrist character. So it doesn't take a genius to make sense of this, I don't think. Still, such secular mysticism is an exception. Most mystics, as we have seen, are strongly influenced by their education. And I just flipped back just to find some highlighted pages. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to read. I did start where I did because it was such insane information. So most of these mystics were influenced by their education, which in a perfectly natural way imbues them with a traditional attitudes and symbols. But the community did not consider that a significant safeguard. By its very nature, mysticism involves the danger of an uncontrolled and uncontrollable deviation from tradition. Did you know Kabbalah actually means the word tradition? So traditionally, even in the Encyclopedia Judaica, it said that Kabbalah was the religious cultural beliefs. And of course that entails mysticism and mixed mystics communicating with beings from behind the veil. So if you're watching this video and you prefer to believe David Wilcock and Corey Goode and planetary ascension and Galactic Federation spaceships in orbit and aliens coming to assist us to get rid of the reptilian aliens that have been controlling mankind for centuries, thousands of years. Something not quite right. I'm trying to say, what is it here? Is it the biblical story and all this Kabbalah and things we can see and hear? Or is it these aliens and we were made by the Anunnaki aliens or other aliens like Barbara Marciniak teaches, the Palladians, and they've come back because they made a mistake thousands of years ago? Or even in the material with Corey Goode recently, some beings, Asareth, however you say it, have come from the future to come back and help humankind. The religious training of the group still leaves room for all manner of spiritual adventures, contrary to the recognized ideas and doctrines likely to bring about a clash between the mystic and the religious authority of his group. There is no doubt one of the many reasons for the widespread belief that a mystic requires a spiritual guide, or guru, as he is called in India. So even Helena Blavatsky had those invisible beings that would appear to her in her room, called these masters. And she went over there to India to learn the Hindu religious information. And part of that's part of the New Age teachings and the teachings in her books. And some of it may be okay, and some of it may not be. I'm still out there trying to weigh it all, but I do want to understand as much as I can as I go along. On the face of it, the function of the guru is primarily psychological. He prevents the student who sets out to explore the world of mysticism from straying off in dangerous situations. So apparently, if you get into these secret societies or study these things, you get this invisible entity to come help you, a master or guru, and they're there to help you from straying off into dangerous situations. I've said before, people should not get into the occult thinking it's something cool. You get into that world and you'll find yourself destroyed. It's like trying to run across the street on a 8-lane interstate in downtown Orlando. You know you're going to get run over. Why do it? And you get into this occult, you know you're going to be destroyed, so why do it? Into Luciferianism and Satanism, you know you're going to lose your soul, so why do it? But social conditioning is powerful. Mind control is powerful. For confusion and even madness lurk in wait, and the path of the mystic is beset by perils. It borders on abysses of consciousness and demands a sure and measured step. The yogis, the Sufis, the Kabbalists, no less than the manuals of the Catholic mysticism, stress the need for such a spiritual guide, without whom the mystic runs the risk of losing himself in the wilderness of mystical adventure. The guide should be capable of preserving the proper balance in the mystic's mind. He alone is familiar with the practical applications of the various doctrines which cannot be learned from books. And he has the additional function, which has been very little discussed, but is nevertheless of great importance. He represents traditional religious authority. He molds the mystic interpretation of his experience, guiding it into channels that are acceptable to established authority. How does he accomplish this? By preparing his student for what he may expect along the way and at the goal. He provides at the onset the traditional coloration which the mystical experience, however amorphous, will assume in the consciousness of the novice. Let us consider, for example, the spiritual exercise of Ignatius of Loyola. Oh boy, the creator of the Jesuits? An invaluable manual of Catholic mysticism. So Ignatius Loyola, the creator of the Jesuits, who I believe he was a Spanish military man. I believe he was probably a crypto-Jewish person. In Spain back then, the 1500s, if you didn't convert to Christianity, you were expelled from Spain if you were Jewish. Apparently, according to the books I've gone over, there was a huge problem between the Christian religion and the religion practiced by the Jewish people. And now that I'm reading this, I can see a problem. So if Ignatius Loyola was a crypto-Jewish person, a Spanish military man, and he was summoned to go before the Pope, but when he came out from that meeting, they had created the Jesuits. So he would have known about the Kabbalah and magic and mind control and controlling people and disciplining them, and that's what the Jesuits were all about. FYI. I've read so many books, I read things like this and his name pops up, and I go, aha, that's who he is. He was one of those people who decided to stay in Spain, say he converted to Christianity. They also called them Moranos. I got a book I made videos on that topic, several books I made on these topics. But a lot of them were continuing to practice their Kabbalah, which we're seeing is mystic communication, and some of them were nihilistic, communicating with the evil beings. And so they get summoned before the Pope. A lot of them were burned at the stake or beheaded. But apparently he made some kind of deal with the Pope. Probably the Vatican was in need of money or some kind of blackmail situation existed. I can only speculate. From the start of it, impregnates the consciousness of the novice with images of Christ's passion. It shows exactly what the novice has to expect at every step. It sets out to produce the phenomenon it promises. It is the same, to take an example from Jewish mysticism, with the Hasidic Kabbalistic analysis of the stages of meditation and ecstasy. And we know a lot of people are into meditation and yoga. That's all intentional, part of the teachings of the New Age, to get people to be able to have these communications or ecstasy experiences, the rising of the Kundalini, some kind of energy from your spine up through your head, contained in a famous treatise emanating from the Chabad school of the White Russian Hasidism. So I know over in Russia and Poland, these types of Kabbalistic Jewish mysticism activities were rampant. It would explain why the Russian leadership, the Tsar, and the Germans were having so many troubles with the Jewish citizens and were policing them. And over the past 2,000 years, Jewish peoples were banished and exiled from country after country after country after country. People didn't know what they were getting into when they brought the Jewish community into their countries. And a lot of them did so because they were having financial problems. And whenever you brought the Jewish community into your country, you experienced a vast accumulation of wealth and business activity. Quite a bizarre story, don't you think? It informs the traveler on the path of active contemplation in detail of the stages through which he must pass if his mystical career is to conform to the strict Jewish conceptions of the pure fear and pure love of God. It provides the traditional Kabbalistic symbols with which this path of the Jewish mystic towards the experience of the divine can be described or interpreted, thus making certain that the path will conform, especially at its most dangerous turning points, to the dictates of the authority. To keep mysticism within the framework of constituted authority, compromises were often necessary. So people who were getting into nihilistic, satanic, Luciferian mysticism sometimes had to compromise with the authorities to continue their practices. Oh my. As one might expect, they vary in the extreme according to the requirements of the various religious groups. As a highly instructive example of such a compromise, I should like to discuss here the Kabbalistic conception of the Guli Elijah, the revelation of the prophet Elijah. It provides an example of how the conservative and the progressive, where have I heard that before? Liberal and progressive. They have us divided, Republicans and Democrats. I keep saying that. Every aspect of our society has to divide the people. Because think about it. If everything is balanced 50-50, it's easy to cause some agitation and you got 50% of the people. So you can create conflict. 50-50, Democrats, Republicans. But if there were, get my fingers wrong here, if there were 80% Republicans and only 20% Democrats, you could never do anything to create a conflict. So even with the football games and the presidential and political elections, they keep everybody divided in two, to conservative or liberal or progressive. It's part of the aspects of the Hegelian dialectic, divide and conquer. So it's a measured things, and they poll society to see where they have to add more or take away from one side or the other to make sure that it's balanced, so that it can be an endless battle. There cannot be a winner and a loser. Just me thinking out loud and trying to resolve why they do things and why all these coincidences continue to take place. I just think it's so weird. You would think that, in some elections it would be disproportional, generally speaking. There would be a good guy, but the way politics is, it's pretty much measured and controlled and meant to be that way. My understanding. Off the topic a little bit. But it does say here, it provides an example of how the conservative and the progressive aspects of mysticism can merge to form a single eloquent symbol. When the first Kabbalist appeared on the scene of Jewish history in Languedoc at the end of the 12th century, they did not claim to have spoken directly with God. They took a compromise position. On the one hand, they wished to communicate something which obviously had not come to them through the traditional or generally accepted channels. But on the other hand, as Orthodox Jews, they could not claim for their own mystical experience the same rank as for the revelation underlying the religious authority of Judaism. All monotheistic religions, one-God religions, possess a distinct conception, one might call it a philosophy, and of their own history. In this view, the first revelation expressing the fundamental contents of a religion is the greatest and the highest in rank. Each successive revelation is lower in rank and less authoritative than the last. So when these mystics have revelations or communications with the beings behind the veil, those revelations can't topple or be placed at a higher level than the existing revelations or orthodox religious teachings. Such a conception forbids a true believer to place a new revelation on the level of the great revelations of the past, and obviously creates a serious problem for the mystic, since he imputes enormous value to his fresh living experience. So you get somebody that's a mystic who can go into a trance or whatever way communicate with the divine, a Ouija board or whatever, divination, and he gets answers that he believes that are true, but the religious authorities don't allow that to rise to the level of the other previous prophecies, teachings. And it apparently caused problems for some of these mystics, these magicians, these sorcerers, these witchcraft people, if you want to call them that. This situation necessitated compromise solutions that were invariably reflected in the religious terminology. In Rabbinic Judaism, from which Kabbalist mysticism developed, in Rabbinical Judaism, from which Kabbalist mysticism developed, a number of different revelations were recognized as authentic and each in his own way authoritative, namely the revelation of Moses, of the prophets, and of the Holy Spirit, which spoke in the authors in Psalms and other parts of the Bible, of the receivers of the heavenly voice, health cow, believed to have been audible in the Talmudic area, and finally the revelation of the prophet Elijah. So when you think about this, and you think about the rise of Israel now, according to prophecy, and even prophecy says the Antichrist will come and be their leader, and it will bring about Armageddon, the destruction of the planet. Now, I told you, when I do these book reviews, I like to be plain spoken so that anybody can understand this. You know, don't believe the hoopla. Oh, Christianity's outdated. It was created a couple hundred years ago to control the people. Now, why are they wanting to rebuild King Solomon's temple? Why are they following prophecy? Why did they deceive us and do 9/11? Why did they deceive us in bringing us World War I and World War II to destroy Turkey, the Turks, the Ottoman Empire? Because they couldn't get their hands on Palestinian land to do all of this for hundreds and hundreds of years. They've been seething and desiring to do this for a couple thousand years. I guess they call this their fourth captivity. I read that in the last book review. Each of these stages represents a lesser degree of authority than the stage preceding it. The principle remained in force, and each generation can claim only a certain level of experience. But mystics could still make a plan for their experience within the traditional framework, provided they defined it in accordance with the descending scale of values. This is why the Kabbalists claim no more for themselves than the seemingly so modest rank of receivers of the revelation of the prophet Elijah. In this connection, it should be borne in mind that in such experience the auditive factor was paramount and the visual factor was only secondary. So when they had these mystic experiences communicating with beings from behind the veil, apparently the auditive factor, what they could hear, was given more importance than what they could see. And the visual factor was only secondary, since primarily, no doubt under the influence of the mystical theory of prophecy referred to above, the Jewish mystics accorded far more importance to the hearing of a voice than the visions of light. With that said, I just thought of something, but Nikola Tesla, who brought us all these advanced technologies, which puts the world in the position it's in today to bring about the global world order and microchip everybody and monitor everybody and police everybody and advanced weapon systems to kill anybody they want. He said he wasn't the genius we all thought he was, that he was hearing things and seeing things, and he had psychic experiences as a child. You get it? Got it? Thank you for watching my video, Rick Miracle reporting.